Whatever you're going through, you will get through it because you're here. And that means you are not alone. This is The Meaningful Meeting. Now your host, Ace Cannon.
Hopefully this is that one meeting that you're going to need every week. This is The Meaningful Meeting. We have meetings for so many things, and how many times they end up being a waste of time. This one today is for you, and it's for me. And it's just for us to kind of reflect and think about things and know that no matter what it is that we're going through, we're not going through it alone, because a lot of other people are going through similar things, and maybe we can draw strength from each other in our stories as we just try to get through the day with things like The Meaningful Meeting. So here's a question. What is the best-selling album in American music history? And why would somebody go back and listen to my old podcasts? What became The Meaningful Meeting? And what can these two things possibly have in common? Well, that's what we're here to get into. So let's answer number one first. The biggest selling album in American music history is, the key of being American, is the Eagles, their greatest hits, 1971 to 1975. That is the biggest selling album in American music history. Yes, I know you're always told Thriller. Thriller is the biggest selling album. Michael Jackson's Thriller, the biggest selling album in the history of recorded music worldwide. But in America, the Eagles, their greatest hits, 1971 to 1975. That album has sold more copies than Thriller. Not by a lot. I think it's something like 42 million to 35 million to 33 million, something like that. And then after episode 1 of The Meaningful Meeting got posted last week, a lady sent me a great message and said how much she enjoyed the podcast and that she had been experiencing something in her life and had actually gone back and listened to old episodes of the Ace at Large podcast and would share them, a couple of them, with her family, helped her get through a difficult time, which first off was incredibly flattering to me. It means the world to me, because I've said before, I'd like to say, I do these because I have these great ideas and do these things for you. That's not, I do this for me because the thought that maybe something I've experienced can help someone else helps me, if that makes any sense. And I thought, well, hang on a second. It kind of gave me an idea. It's been long enough that maybe a greatest hits is needed from the old podcast. After all, I was in the thick of fighting through a depression, trying to make my life better when it seemed like everything was going wrong. Have I fought through that? What were the ideas, the concepts? What were the experiences that I had in my life during some incredibly difficult times, some of which are still going on, that helped me get through? Thus, today, this episode of The Meaningful Meeting is essentially 4 of the greatest hits from the old Ace at Large podcast. Kind of recapping a couple of things, because chances are you haven't seen every one of these. You haven't heard every one of these, and there'll be a little something in here you might be able to take with you. So also, maybe today I need to remind myself of how to get through it all. So the greatest hits. Let's start with one of my favorites. Billy Joel said it best. The good old days weren't always good, and tomorrow ain't as bad as it seems. It's in a song called Keep the Faith, an album he did, kind of a tribute to the 50s that he did in the middle 80s. It's one of my favorite lines. The good old days weren't always good, and tomorrow ain't as bad as it seems, because it speaks to who we are as humans. You tend to look back a lot of times on things that have happened in the past, and man, those were the good old days. Those days were, everything about them seems to be beautified, if that's even a word. Everything about them, the rough edges seem to soften when you look back at the past a lot of times. And you look back at the good old days through rose-colored glasses, and it looks so good. Man, it was a good time. And maybe it was a good time. But the good old days weren't always good. There were bad times then, too. And I know one of the things that I'm guilty of is looking ahead long term and thinking, man, the future can't be as good as the good old days. Because I'll be honest with you, I had some good old days. But I'd be willing to bet if you took the time to kind of chart it out and look at it objectively, you would see that, yeah, you might be going through a rough time right now. But there have still been good times. Good days, good events, stroke of luck here and there. Positive things have happened in your life, even with what you're experiencing today. But we don't see it as much because as we grow older, a lot of times the negativity of the future seems even scarier. When you're a kid, when you're young, the future, it's everything. I'm going to get there. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And a lot of times as you get older, especially once you've experienced some bad times, you become a little more wary. The things out there in the future don't seem to quite have that shine to them that they had when you were younger, because you got a lot more to lose. And in many ways, you're running out of time. But think about that. Think about Billy Joel. The good old days weren't always good, and tomorrow ain't as bad as it seems. I love that line so much. All we hear about is how scary tomorrow is. All we hear about is how bad tomorrow is. What's going to be bad next week? What's going to be bad next year? What's going to be bad 10 years from now? If we're even alive on the planet Earth to experience what life is going to be like in 10 years. A lot of people say we won't be. They've been saying that forever. Yeah, the good old days had their highlights. The good old days had those memories, those great times that we will cherish forever, and we should. But what gets lost a lot of times in all the highlights are the lowlights. You forget the days when you were down. You forget the days when you doubted yourself. You forget the days when you were struggling. Or at least they don't seem as bad because you got those highlights that are really exciting. Don't let the future scare you. This is something I'm teaching myself right now. To be quite honest, a lot of times because of the age gap in my marriage, I worry about the future a lot. I've experienced a lot of negative things in the past couple years that have made me scared about the future and worried about my future and feeling my age like, oh man, I don't know if I can do this. And then that makes me feel bad because I want to do so many great things for a man and blah, 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 blah. It all begins to work in your head and you can't sleep at night and you're up at 1:45 scrolling through TV. Watching the Redeem Team on Netflix for the second time. Yeah, that's recent. If you've seen it on Netflix, you know that's recent. Just remember that. The good old days weren't always good, and tomorrow ain't as bad as it seems. One of my favorites, compliments of my son. God bless him, we're two very different people. And nobody can bring my level of insecurity or bring my level of anxiety down the way my son can. Because my man operates right here all the time. He is just cool. Oh, it'll be fine. I got it. Greatest hit number 2. Remember this. Always remember this. And I'm terrible at this. Remember this. One question you can ask yourself. Are we going to eat? This got such a great reaction when I first told this story originally. And I feel the need to share it all the time because I think it's so important. It speaks to this great quality that my son has that I do not possess. And I'll give you a little overview. Real quick, I'll replay the story for you. 8 years old. I was the head coach of his basketball team. We'd made it to the championship game. Very close game. Back and forth all game long. We come down. There's less than a minute left. And my man just pulls up at the free throw line, about a step inside the free throw line. Boom. Hits a jump shot. Cold as ice. Doesn't faze him. Doesn't celebrate. Just bam. Drops it. Back down the floor. The other team scores. We come back down the floor. Kay passes it off to his friend who hits a jumper. Oh my God, we've got the lead with 8 seconds left. We're up by 1 with 8 seconds left. The other team inbounds the ball. They run the length of the floor. We're talking 8, 9-year-olds. And a kid throws up a shot from outside the lane that barely grazes the top of the backboard. The very top of the backboard that's legal. Skips right off it and drops in as the clock goes to 0 and we lose. And the kids are heartbroken. They played their hearts out. The other team's excited as they should be jumping up and down. Our kids, I immediately start out onto the court to try to talk to them. And, hey, are we good? Hey, it's okay. And I'm grabbing, some of them are crying. I'm just having my arm around, like, hey, it's okay, man. You played your hearts out. It's the way it goes sometimes. The last team that had the ball was going to win the game. Today wasn't our day, but man, did we play good. And I see as they come across the floor, my son has his arm around a teammate who's got his head down and appears to be crying. Not a tear in Cade's eye. And I'm consoling another player. And as Cade goes by, we make eye contact, and I kind of nod my head and say, hey, you okay? And he's got his arm around. I can see it plain as day, looking over his right shoulder to me. And I said, you okay? And he goes, yes, sir. Are we going to eat? That's all you got to know. When it's over, it's over. You can't change it. And in that moment, he'd already moved on. You know what his follow-up question was? Are we getting like a trophy, or we get a medal or something? You get a medal, my man. You get a medal for second place. You don't get the big trophy. Oh, okay. Moving on. That's just the greatest. That's the greatest thing. It's over. And there's the lesson. It's over. Are we going to eat? That's the next thing. Moving on to the next thing. It's over. You can't change the past. Clock's ticked. They've closed the book. It's done. Did you do all you could to be a winner? Did you do everything you could to be a winner? And if you didn't, what did you learn? What did you do wrong? And then you know what? You go eat. Because that's the next thing. You let it go. You can't change what already happened. Move forward with the new knowledge you've gathered. And don't let that worry you, because that's over. That game, done. We move on to the next game. It's like always having the mindset of a safety or a cornerback more specifically, in professional football or in football in general. Because they're always told, you forget, as soon as the play's over, you forget it. Because they're out there on an island. They're one guy against another, and they're going to get beaten at some point. At some point, they've all been beaten for a touchdown. They've all been burned, because that's the nature of the position that they play. They're reacting, trying to anticipate where another guy who knows where he's going is going. And sometimes you're going to guess wrong. And it's over. It moves on. So whatever that situation is, whatever it is, that fight that you've been fighting, whatever it is that's hassling you, that's bothering you, when it's over, just remember to ask yourself, are we going to eat? Because that's what's next. It's time to move on to the next thing. And a story I saw on Twitter brought up greatest hit number 3. Tony Dungy had posted a picture of his family. Tony Dungy, who's on Sunday Night NFL Football now, won an NFL championship with the Indianapolis Colts as the head coach, with Peyton Manning as his quarterback. Fine man. The type of man you want your son to grow up to be. Just a fine, hard-nosed, hard-playing, kind Christian man. Successful professional football player, successful professional football coach, successful professional broadcaster, and always comes off as a really good Christian person. But he posted a photo one time on Twitter of his family all wearing their masks, height of COVID. They were able to get to Hawaii. This was the summer of 2021. And he said, we're finally able to take that trip we didn't get to take last year. And somebody had gone under his post and posted something about, oh, that's great. How dare you post this photo while so many of us are still stuck inside, unable to do anything. Good for you. Kind of, oh, good for you. And that brings up greatest hit number 3. You make yourself bitter or better. you make yourself bitter or better. Does being jealous of someone else help you in any way? Does expecting someone else to do less in their life help you do more in your life? No, it does not. That does not improve you. Expecting others to do less doesn't mean that you are necessarily going to do more, especially when your life and their life don't intersect in any way other than via social media. It's up to you. It's up to me. It's up to us to make ourselves bitter or better. And I always give this example because it's so true. And I can remember having these conversations with my mom specifically when I was a child, but my dad was the same way, thankfully. You'd see someone with a great car. You'd be like, man, that's a nice car. And I can remember these conversations. My parents would both say, hey, look, that's it, man. That's your future. You work hard. This is the type of life you can have. You can have these things. You can go places. You can experience things. And I'm not trying to share this point from just a physical, a tangible idea, from a place of just, things you can see, touch, vacations, houses, that kind of thing. That's not what I mean. In the grand scope of things, we're going to make ourselves bitter or better. Someone else's success, someone else doing well that doesn't mean that you can't do well. Doesn't mean that they're hurting you in any way. We all have different talents. We all have different abilities. We all have different situations in life. Assess yourself and move forward by making yourself better, not bitter. Our lives are up to us and no one else. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it takes a lot. Sometimes it's a beating. Sometimes you got to work harder than everybody else. But it's up to us. Our jealousy of someone else's success doesn't breed success for us. Our jealousy of someone else's life doesn't improve our life. It actually hampers it. We can use it as inspiration. Like, good for them. I'm going to go out and do the same thing. That's making yourself better. Being jealous only makes you bitter. You make yourself bitter or better. Greatest hit number 4 in today's final 5 minutes. The most important question I think you could ever ask yourself in these situations. The most important question. Next.
The one meeting you actually need each week. There's more of the Meaningful Meeting with Ace coming up.
The Johnson Group Facility Services is a commercial cleaning company that focuses more on customer satisfaction than the bottom line because each customer works directly with the owners every step of the way. If you need any commercial cleaning, the Johnson Group can handle it. Get details at acetj.com/clean.
If you want to sleep better and lose weight, then the product that you need is called Calitrin, or you can pronounce it Calitrin. Very easy for you to get. Just go to acetj.com/weight loss. acetj.com/weight loss for Calitrin.
Welcome back to the most important meeting of the week. The Radio Button presents The Meaningful Meeting with Ace.
All right, so we've covered the greatest hits so far for the old Ace at Large podcast, but these are just as important for this week's edition of The Meaningful Meeting. Here they are, in case you missed anything. Remember, greatest hit number 1. Billy Joel said it best. The good old days weren't always good, and tomorrow ain't as bad as it seems. Don't fool yourself into thinking everything in the past of your life was great. The future is just scary. And what do I do now? Tomorrow has never turned out to be as bad as it seems. When I was a kid in the 70s, the Ice Age was coming. In the 90s, they told us we weren't going to live to 2010. Tomorrow's not as bad as it seems. Number 2, are we going to eat? When it's over, it's over. Assess what happened. Did you do all you could do to be a winner? What did you learn? What could you have done better? And then it's gone. It's over. The question Kate asked me after losing a heartbreaking basketball game that day. He wasn't sad. Me hated he lost. He was like, okay, well, that's over. We going to eat? Yeah. Are we going to eat? because that's the next thing in your mind. You go right to the next thing. Then number 3, you make yourself bitter or better. Being jealous of someone else's success does not help you attain success. Use them for inspiration. Don't just sit around and complain about them, because complaining about other people and their success and what their lives have turned out and how great they have it doesn't really help you in any way. Matter of fact, it only weighs you down. That anger weighs you down and prevents you from being the success that you should be. In this week's final 5 minutes, the most important question you can ever ask yourself. It is such a powerful question, and it didn't even occur to me until about a year or two ago, year and a half ago. It's such a simple question, and I can give you such a great example of the power of this question. The question is very simple. Why not? Why not? That's the most important question you can ask yourself. Now, let me preface it with this. There has to be some logic tied to it. For example, if I said at this point, I'm 54 years old, and I said, you know what? I think I'm going to hit the gym and I'm going to go back to college. I have eligibility and I'm going to play college football and I'm going to become the tight end for the Carolina Panthers. Well, that's not going to happen. You can't. Well, why not? Somebody said, you can't do that. Am I going to say, why not? Because A, that's not where my talents lie. And B, I'm 54. And C, most importantly, I would die. So have some sense about it. You got to be, you just can't be stupid. But it's such a powerful question. Why not? And here's my example. I've used it a million times. In 2001, there was a TV show on ABC called Making the Band. The band they created was a band called O-Town. And I said on the radio, I've always wanted to be in a band. Let's make a band. We'll play one time, one night at one event. And that's it. Just want to do it. They can do it on TV. We can do it on the radio. And what happened? Through a series of unbelievably unusual events, I end up creating a band called Charity Case. So here are some why not questions before we get into how it all worked out. Well, you can't create a band. You don't have any musical talent. Okay. That's not a problem. You can't create a band. Why not? You don't have any musical talent. I get musicians. And I did. And we created this thing called Charity Case that became, quite honestly, maybe the biggest draw in the Charlotte area. After all these years, the band hasn't played since 2019. 2021 would have been the 20-year anniversary. And we wanted to do something, but COVID was a real problem then. In those years, from 2001 to 2019, Charity Case raised over $1.4 million for Ace and TJ's Green Kids Charity. Nobody in that band ever got paid for playing. Nobody made any money. Nobody got rich. Everybody spent money. I spent a lot of money on Charity Case. We sold out everywhere. We raised over $1.4 million in the process. Yeah, we opened for Bon Jovi in 2006 at a sold-out Spectrum Center in the Mothership Market of Charlotte. We opened for Bret Michaels. I ended up on stage with Bret Michaels in front of like 8,000 people. If you'd have told me when I was 19, when I was 18, when I first heard Poison and loved that band and went to see them, I saw Poison open for David Lee Roth on the Open Up and Say Ah tour, and that 20 years later or more than 20 years later, he was going to know my name and call me up on stage, and he was going to throw me a microphone to sing with him, and I've got the picture at my house to prove it. You know why that happened? Because when somebody said, you can't start a band, I was like, why not? They do it on TV. Why can't we do it on the radio? But most importantly, it happened because I met a guy named Eddie Z who said, we should turn this into a thing. And I said, well, we can't do that. He's like, why not? Why can't we turn this into a band that could play in clubs and give all the money to charity throughout the area? I said, oh, okay. Well, okay. You think we could do that? Yeah. And we had these musicians and we put this thing together and we started to play and it kind of got fun. And then I figured out what I was doing as the lead singer and it began to grow and it took a life of its own. And then suddenly they had convinced me there was nothing that we couldn't do. Nothing. All because of that. Why not? We can't do fireworks in these clubs. Why not? Yeah, you can. You weren't supposed to, but you could. And we were awesome at it. We can't sell out these places. Here's another one. I can't write a song. Why not? Now, I've written a bunch of them. That's pretty crazy. All because they said, why not? We can't headline festivals like in Hickory, North Carolina, or in Statesville, or in Lincolnton, North Carolina, and play to thousands. We can't make a DVD. Why not? We can't make another DVD. Why not? We can't headline in front of 15,000 people at a festival. Why not? Yes, we can. We can. Because you just haven't said why not a couple of times and it works, you begin to believe. I'll never feel good again. Why not? I'll never date again. Why not? I'll never fall in love again. Why not? I just can't be successful. Why not? Why not? That's the most important question you need to ask yourself. Why not? You won't if you keep thinking that way. This has been a major thing in my life lately. This is one of the reasons I wanted to do this greatest hits thing today. And I know I've gone past 5 minutes. It's the final 5 minutes. Maybe it's going to be like the final 8 minutes. Bear with me because I'm into this right now. Because as much as anything, this is me telling myself. This is what I keep telling me. Can I get back to where I used to be? Why not? It's going to be different. It's going to be hard. It's a different world. It's an uphill struggle. You want complete honesty? That's what I've been going through for the past couple of years. Can I get back to where I was when it felt like for years, everything I touched turned to gold? Professionally speaking. I mean, we've got a track record that's hard to beat. And it still works to this day. The world changes. Can I get back to being what I used to be? Why not? You can do it too. I'll never feel good again. Why not? I can't be successful anymore. Why not? I'll never date again. Why not? Oh, everybody sucks. Everybody doesn't suck. I've seen a bajillion people on social media that talk about how much the opposite sex sucks or dating sucks or same-sex dates suck. I don't know. Everything's bad. And after a year or two of seeing that, boom, next thing you know, they're in this great relationship because it came out of nowhere. Look at me. I'm that guy. It happened to me. I wasn't looking for it. Bam. Why not? Why not? I hope you're as inspired as I am right now because I'm pretty pumped. That's why I come here every week. That's why we have this meeting. That's why I want to hear your stories. Share your experiences. Let me know what resonates with you. Give me an example of why not was important and how why not was important in your life. Because you've got one. And if you haven't had one, you're about to have one. And remember, one day you will tell your story of how you've overcome what you are going through right now. And it will become a part of someone else's survival guide. That's why I'm here every week. That's why I hope you're here every week. Because we're helping each other through difficult times. That's why I'll be back here next week.
Now, whatever you're going through, you're not alone. You are a part of the Meaningful Meeting, presented by the Radio Network. Copyright ATJ Inc. 2022.